Vil du kjøre du kanskje, Helena, da?
Hello, and welcome to Product Club. First time ever we're on video. This is very exciting. We will add the link to the video in the show notes if you want to see who we are. If not, just listen in your normal podcast format. Good morning, Hans Martin. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm here with a little bit of a cold, so this is why we're doing it on video as well, because we're actually remote this time around, which is the first for this podcast. But we've done that before, though.
But I think this makes sense. I mean, we're probably going to spend some time at home moving forward, and this is actually nicer that we get to see everyone, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit better than the usual kind of audio only Clubhouse thing that we did earlier.
Yes,
so we can actually see
it's
each other.
much nicer.
But Halina, who for the new listeners out there, who are you?
I am product manager of Vipps, which is a Norwegian, I guess we called it fintech in its time, but it's not really a fintech anymore. It's more of an institution in Norway. It's a financial system, basically, in Norway. But I am product manager there, and I just love talking about products, and so this is why we're doing this podcast. It's not really Vipps related or Oda related, but we just like talking to people in the Nordic product scene.
I think it actually the interesting thing here is like you're working for Vipps. That is one of the few brands out there that actually has a verb. Like the name has actually become a verb.
Yep.
I think
to Vipps someone.
Yeah, to Vipps someone, right? And our guest is kind of also from a place which has a word kind of as a name as well. So which is cool. But we're going to get back to that. But I'm just going to say two words on who I am, because I'm Hans Martin. I'm working as a product manager in Oda. And I'm the sidekick of Halina in this context, doing product talking, basically.
I don't think you're the sidekick anymore, Hans Martin. You're a full-on member now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
A co-host.
Co-host, nice. But we have some awesome guests with us that comes from this verb company. I don't know who of you wants to start introducing yourself. You can start with Ragnhild, perhaps.
I can start.
Yeah. All right.
So we come from Finn, and I heard the first discovery talk that you had you had learned that you have to say Finn.no, and I was like, oh, we do?
Yeah, some people in your company are very firm on that. We need to call it Finn.no.
It might be true. And I think we're not allowed to use it as a verb in marketing, but it is, of course, used a little bit funnily as a verb. But yes, my name is Ragnhild, and I work as the service design team lead. So I'm in charge of all the service designers that we have in our company. And I also am currently working on not a project, but as a former consultant, I'm, of course, damaged. So I call it a project, but I'm working on an area on an initiative in Torge that will be coming live during the spring, I hope.
And if there's anybody out there who's not from Norway, what does Finn do?
So Finn it's a marketplace. It's a digital marketplace. So it's for everyone in Norway who wants to sell their things, their house, get a job. So it helps you with a lot of things that you need to get done. And I think if you're an expat and you've recently come to Norway, Finn is like a leading guide to help you get all the things that you need. So it's a marketplace where you can find pretty much anything, I think.
Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Hege, you are also from Finn. You want to tell us about yourself?
Yes, I would like to. Yes, I'm the UX director. So that means that I have both Ragnhild's team and the UX design team and a visual design team. It's a fantastic group of around 30 designers. So they are embedded in all the development teams. And I'm in the product leader group in Finn. So working strategically as well as a leader for the UX department. I can add a little bit about Finn, because for people who don't know Finn, it's one of two marketplaces in the world that have the broadest set of verticals. So it's Trade Me in New Zealand, which is on the opposite side of the world, and it's Finn in Norway. So that is kind of cool that we have all these different marketplaces. So we have like approximately every adult person in Norway as a user. So 4 million active users.
Same as Vips, actually. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
in a good company here.
Because
We have
it's something
around
that
4
everybody
million.
does. Yeah.
I have just as a fun fact, I have a friend, same age as me, born in '86, that she had never used Finn before this summer. So
Wow.
she was
Wow.
like, "Oh, I found Finn, it's amazing." And so I had to, of course, interview her to
Where
do
has
some
she
this.
been?
I
That's
don't
very
know.
interesting.
She was it's this paranoia around being scammed, because when I interview people who use Torge, no one that I've interviewed has been scammed, but they all have a friend who has been scammed.
Yes.
So she has
Yes.
probably listened to those friends and hasn't experienced the trust that we actually have built on our platform, which is pretty
Mm.
cool. So it's
But
very interesting.
Yeah.
she didn't know about Finn,
No, she did
or
know about Finn, of
yeah,
course,
okay,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
because
but she
otherwise she
hadn't
will kind
used
of
it.
live under a rock somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no. She knew about it, but she was skeptical, and then she
Mm.
started using it, and now she's hooked. She will ask me weird questions about, oh, is it normal to pay before you ship something? I was like, yes, it's completely normal. Yeah. So that was fun.
But
That's
this is an
interesting in a
Because
product
yeah.
discovery context. Like you have these outliers that, of course, it's super interesting to talk to, but you can't necessarily make the product for them. But it's a very interesting insight when you have these few people who don't use it.
but
And it
I
was
think yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ragnhild, sorry.
I think
Mm.
the of course the interview with her, it was mostly for fun, but what we did learn is, because she had this outside perspective that a lot of the people we talk to don't have, because she's experiencing everything for the first time. So a lot of her insecurities are, for example, for new users, where it was an interesting talking point for the people in the team that I'm working with. So I thought it was still interesting, even though we're not putting it directly into product development.
So there we have our first concrete tip of the episode. So even if you are talking to someone who doesn't seem like your target audience, there's always something to learn, right?
Definitely. Always, you don't know what you're going to learn. So just, it's about facilitating a conversation and being curious.
And we always have newcomers because people grow up. So kids become youth, and then they become adults. So you will always have to cater to those needs as well. Because we have been
That's right.
talking to non-users on Finn regarding Gen Z, a project we did last year. And so we had 15-year-olds that had never been on Finn. So it's really, really interesting to talk to them.
Mm.
But
So speaking of then, sorry, Hans Martin, we just keep on talking. You
yeah,
don't
no, no,
get to
no.
come in.
But I think it's kind of interesting because we tend to, like, all of us kind of work in fairly kind of established things, right? So Vips has become a verb. You guys have been around forever, right? In like the digital sphere of at least kind of the Norwegian market, and Oda that I work in is also kind of fairly established in Norway now, and we tend to forget that people don't actually, like, everybody doesn't necessarily know what we're all about and how we work. And I think that trust element that you touched upon here is that is, yeah, we always kind of assume that people would trust us just because we are who we are, sort of. We have a different thing now where some of you know that Oda is going abroad, right, and opening up in new markets. And one thing that we do in Norway is that we put the food boxes outside the door, right? And then we go, sort of say bye bye, and then the people pick that up, right? Um, but that doesn't necessarily work everywhere else, right? Because people don't trust each other. Like, people could come and steal your food, sort of, like, that wouldn't almost never happen, sort of, in Norway. I haven't heard about one case about that in Norway, but in other markets that's actually a thing, right? And I guess kind of both for Finn, which is kind of mostly like some of the key selling points is kind of you have built-in trust sort of into the platform, and for Vips as well, naturally, like the actual, like, you can transfer money between individuals, right, and also pay for stuff on Finn. Basically, that's there is something about this trust element that we tend to forget, that we have to learn people again and again, and okay, you can trust this service,
Definitely.
right?
I mean, we're talking about that now that we are expanding to Europe. That in Norway, there's a really unique trust, both in the financial systems and also in larger companies and brands. You have this trust. So it's exactly the same for us. We would need to do some new discovery in our product for things that we actually assume just works in Norway. But obviously, transferring money, transferring goods, receiving goods, it's all based on a huge amount of trust. But let's not get too far into this. My job is always to like try and and get us back to the topic. So I just wanted to hear from you and Finn, like how, when we talk about product discovery, how is it set up in your company? You said already that you have distributed product teams. So how do you work with product discovery, research, going into these unknown phases? Just say a bit about that.
I can first draw the line or talk a little bit about how we're organized, because that sort of trickles down into how the different teams work. We have one kind of small department that is called strategy and business development, where they look at long-term changes. What is happening in the car market, for instance? Will we be owning cars 10 years down the road? Will we be subscribing to cars? Will it be electrical cars, or what will the world look like? So they look at they look outside the Nordics. They look at the whole world, how the market is changing, and then that will sometimes trickle down into new initiatives in more the core of the business. And then we have something we call new Nordic marketplaces, and that is, if we use the wordings that Clay Christensen uses, that is probably new market disruption. So they look at how they can move really, really fast into new markets and new segments. And then we have the core business, which is doing sustaining innovation. So, and that is where Ragnhild works right now, in sustaining innovation in core. So you can talk a little bit about how you work there, Ragnhild.
In core?
Yeah.
Yes. So I work in a product team. I think we're around 12 people now. It varies from month to month depending on what sort of people we need. So you use both the 4D and the 3D. I think it's called, with the product manager, the UX, and the tech. And we have two different tech people who are in the 4D model. So it's the design lead, the product manager, and someone from tech, who are supposed to, I guess, be part of all the major decisions on figuring out what the goals that we have are. Of course, we include everyone else in finding those, but yeah, sorry, I'm rambling. But so, and we also have several different developers, and I'm also very fortunate to collaborate with a very talented UI designer who knows all the things I don't know when it comes to design. So we started off as a team in January, but we weren't fully staffed until June. But then we started we didn't start off with planning a lot. We planned a little bit, and then we started doing research, so discovery work pretty quickly. And there had been a lot of discovery work done already with the business developers who work in Torget. And Torget has been I don't know the saying in English, but bakerens barn. So it's been neglected a little bit throughout the years with the other priorities.
Because it was the first product that you had, right? So basically buying and selling used smaller goods.
Like general merchandise.
Yes, general merchandise.
Yeah. Clothes and shoes and
so
chairs.
I am part of a team now building something that has been we've been waiting for it for a while. So how we work with something we call we have a Monday meeting where we decide what are the most important things we can do to reach a pretty short goal that we have. And we work in 2 weeks. It's not sprints, but we have that goal for 2 weeks, and then we do all the tasks that we need to do to reach that goal within those 2 weeks.
And is that the
Do
discovery
you do
phase then, or
radical
is it
focus?
also delivery?
Yes, radical focus. Thank you, Hege. That was the word I wasn't finding.
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
But is it a discovery phase, or is it both discovery and delivery, or can it vary?
It's when we started a year ago, we started with only discovery because we didn't have an engineering team that was big enough to start building everything yet. But they started, building a little bit. So it's definitely, I would say it's parallel. So we had some discovery work that had been done before we as a team were put together, where there hadn't really been engineers on the team, and then we got a proper team set up, and then it's been parallel. So I'm in charge of doing the discovery work, and I like to include everyone, not in planning and doing everything, but the value of having these digital discovery interviews and stuff now is that we can create a stream, and we can have 13 people sitting at home paying attention to the interview. And if you just have time to do half an interview, I say, then join on half an interview so that we can have your expertise in the discussions that we have after. So I think all of our developers are taking part in taking in the same learnings that I'm having. And
Can I ask a thing here, because you started out with kind of product discovery, but before that you kind of have a realization that something needs to be done, or did you kind of have like a direction, or was it just kind of general, we need to do something sort of
yeah, it's
We
the latter.
actually- Yeah, we actually did a pure discovery project 3 years ago in 2018 because we realized that there were some issues regarding trust when you trade with someone on Torget. So we did a 3 or 4 month discovery project back then, and understood that we needed to fix payment and delivery. So that was sort of the basis. And then we've been trying to establish this team for quite some time because that is not something we do quite often in Finn. We have the same kind of teams, and then they just do new discovery and find new things to iterate on. But this was sort of a new thing on Finn. That is why it took quite a while to get this team set up. And so they knew that they had something. They knew that it was about that latter part of the journey, the transaction.
Yeah, because you have, I guess, kind of you can have kind of realization that, okay, we need to do something, but then you kind of have the question of, do we change everything, or do we do the little things, kind of, because you could kind of go in a direction with, like, we need to redefine Torget, kind of, we need to kind of build a whole new experience, or you can kind of work on some parts of it, right? I'm just curious to kind of hear how you thought about that, because you, I mean, for if I think back to my days in Schibsted, when I was working on the media side of things, we were very quickly were to kind of grasp the thing. Oh, we need to reimagine news, kind of, for instance, like we need to change the core thing because it doesn't work anymore for some reason, right? And I guess it's kind of the same, a little bit the same in Finn. Like the model is so established, right, that you want to kind of reimagine it, but are we kind of are you on that track, or kind of like your thought process around that?
I would say we are both, because core is doing the sustaining innovation. They're not reimagining everything all the time. But in new marketplaces, like I talked about the new Nordic marketplaces, they are supposed to. So I can give a couple of examples on how we do it if it's not really core, because now Ragnhild has talked about how they do it in core, like payment and delivery, etc. And then in new marketplaces, they will take maybe one tiny segment. It could be one category on Torget, or it could be one segment, like one user group that we don't cater to that well today. and they could dive into that and do like a 3-month discovery phase and see if this is something that is worth going forward with. So do we have a user need here? Is this something we could make into a viable product? Is it feasible for Finn to do it? And should we do it? So they look at all these aspects and see if they should establish what we call an initiative, which is a project, but we don't call it projects. And they can reimagine. They are free to run fast and be flexible and do things not according to how we normally do things in Finn. So it could look like something different. It could have a different UX pattern. It could have it doesn't have to use all the platform capabilities that we have, for instance. So they can do things in a quite different way.
So that's
And then
kind of that's the easy job basically, because you could do everything.
you
Kind of,
can
yeah.
do everything.
No
And then the
restraint.
hard job comes. That is, if it succeeds, you have
Right.
to merge it with core.
Mm.
And that is really, really hard.
We actually touched upon that in the first part of this product discovery talk, how then companies set up these kind of, some call it innovation hubs, some call it just initiatives for research. But I think that this is where the organization comes in. And the question I get asked a lot when it comes to product discovery is, how do we have time to do it in our day-to-day work? So how do we make sure that we have continuous product discovery? And this is where you need to separate, in my opinion, you need to separate those bigger unknowns into its own initiative, because you can't actually, you don't have time. If you work in core, it might be fun to look at these bigger things, reimagining, but your job in core, I mean, I work in core as well with payment. Your job is to make that as great as it can be, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to let that go a little bit into other teams. And then, of course, you can discuss what is the best way to organize it. And I don't think anyone has that answer, because you can also get into problems if you keep that innovation team for too long, for instance, and then they start kind of iterating, etc. So it sounds like you had a good setup for it, that you spend 3 months is kind of time boxed, and then you need to decide something. So what's your, how have you felt that? Is there any push and pull in these like core teams, and how they then deal with that research that comes from the what did you call the team, that the new biz team?
Yeah, the end cases, we normally say, like in our everyday. So the end cases have more than 3 months. They have 3 months of pure discovery. And then the team is very, very tiny. It's a UXer, a tech person, and a PM. And then afterwards, if they see that this is something that we should move forward with, we might put on some more tech people and then try to nail it. So the research phase is very high level, and then we need to sort of dive into making concepts. And it's in that concept phase you realize whether you're going to nail it or not. And that could last for a half a year, maybe 3/4 of a year. So they don't have to merge immediately. They can run for a couple of years before they have to merge with core.
And I guess in an organization like Finn, you would have probably several of these kind of running at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And how do you? Because I'm interested in how information flows throughout the company, right? Because I mean, those initiatives, like Helena mentioned, they could very well kind of be in isolation, right? But how do you actually work with spreading that information across the company? Or are these kind of closed loops, or how do you get the whole company behind those initiatives?
I don't necessarily think the whole company is behind it or knows very much about it, because it's a separate unit. So don't mess with what they're doing. Let them run.
So they're not even organized in product. They're organized in a whole different department in Finn.
Yeah.
So I agree.
But it has a yearly wheel, so to speak. So every 4 months they will be in the management team presenting where they're at, like a status presentation, and get a thumbs up or a thumbs down to continue. So the leader group is very much into it.
But at some point you need to kind of get the company behind it, right? If it kind of succeeds, right? If you find that you have nailed that, like how do you move from those secret kind of run around initiatives sort of to something that is actually core, something that you, Ragnhild, would kind of take over at some point.
I think the official term, Hans Martin, in product
Mm.
is alignment.
Oh, sorry, yeah, alignment. I should know. Yeah.
I don't think
By the way, we
from
talked about doing a product bullshit episode when we
Alignment
talk
is
about all
everywhere.
these words.
Yeah.
I thought
All the abbreviations.
the just the words continuous discovery for me, as I'm educated as a service designer, is a little bit bullshit bingo already, because it's
Yeah.
just new phrasing for something that has been done even before I was taught in school. It's just
Yeah,
new words
I
that
agree.
some American made up to sell books. But
We're
yes,
going
I
to
think
rename it to something else.
lovely. In the new marketplaces department, I don't think we have had any cases yet that has entered core. But from the previous model that we have, the CAN model with the core, adjacent, and new, I guess new development is the one they've been forced into core with our new organization a little bit. I don't know if you
Because
know more
But
than me about those.
but they're not merged yet. They
Mhm.
Yeah.
will be. So, and that is always a struggle
Yeah.
to merge it, because um, it's not necessarily easy either when you have sort of dived into one very specific vertical, and the rest of the core wants to do things more horizontal because it should fit more segments, for instance. So that is up for discussions, and the platform teams also might question, why have you done it this way when we are doing it this way, etc.
Mhm. But this is where kind of the actual kind of framing around like what is actually kind of new development and product development versus what is continuous discovery, right? Because
Yeah.
or like yeah, in what you guys call core then, because you could I guess kind of like business wise you would always chase new opportunities, right? Because you need to kind of expand, you need to grow, you need to kind of do all the things. But in a sense it's like everything I've seen, at least in my career as well, is that it is super hard to kind of get these new initiatives merged into whatever is the core business, and then sort of start afresh again, sort of, and find
Mm.
something else. It rarely works, right? So I guess kind of the how do you, so if we then shift back to kind of the core things, like how do you do that kind of, how do you improve the current core kind of, which is so massively established, right? And in the Finn case it really is, right? This is the
Mm.
backbone of how we built kind of online marketplaces in Norway, right?
Mm.
How do you actually kind of work with changing and iterating and renewing sort of.
I think it has something to do with every month we have a business review, both in the product leader group and in the management team, the top management team. So we have business reviews where we look at the financial situation, but we also look at all the health indicators, like new users, how many effekthandlinger. Oh my God.
Oh Lord.
Uh, well, how
Affect
many
actions.
actions? Yeah, how many
Let's just
actions do
call
they
them
do?
yeah, general KPIs basically.
Yeah,
You can do it
yeah,
that way.
and retention
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
all the health metrics. And if we see that some of them are doing a dive, that something is not right here, like liquidity is not as it should be, or um, we have a lot less volume on general merchandise. If we see something in that business review, we will start investigating a little bit. And that could lead to a discovery phase. Not necessarily, but it could do that. And I guess the same goes for you when you are in a particular team, Ragnhild, that you will maybe not you in your team, but Katrine, who is the product director for general merchandise, she will be looking at the market and competitors and how are we doing generally. And then that could lead to some investigation, some discovery. But
Mhm.
also in the core teams, when you are working, you're doing discovery, Ragnhild.
Yeah, and this what we're building. I don't think I actually said what we are building, but we're working on. You mentioned it a little bit, Hege, but we're working on how you can book both, or you can pay with Vips through Finn, and book shipping in the same go that you sort of buy something from the general merchandise from Torget, so that as a buyer, if you live in Trondheim, you don't have to Vips the seller and trust without actually really knowing that you can trust someone that you will get the item that you're trying to buy. So it's what Thais already has. We're trying to also build. Yeah, we and once we have something out there, we will of course look at numbers to see how things are working and where we need to push. But for now, we have assumptions on where our problems lie. And it's a little bit back to what you, Hans Martin, talked about earlier about these changing of habits a little bit, because people are so used to shopping in one way on Torget, and now we are creating an add-on, if you will, something new. So you have to find things in other places, and it's just like driving home after you've moved. You just drive where you moved, where you lived before, because that's where you're used to driving. So it's this. I think we'll have a problem with the autopilot people have when they're selling on Finn. So we're trying to create something that works against that autopilot. And also from the user research or the tests that we have done, we see that. But for now, we've come to a place where the user tests become a little bit synthetic, because people know they're testing something new, so they're looking for the new things. So that I don't really believe in the results that we're getting from the user tests anymore. Of course, we learn something, but we can't really know. So I'm really eager to get some real numbers. We'll probably get some more real numbers in January to see where the pain points are for us to nail and scale this solution. Um,
But I think,
yeah.
yeah, you mentioned a thing here about the autopilot that I also kind of find interesting, because we tend to design the product for our heavy users, right? Because that's what's generating the metrics, right? You actually kind of you can follow them, right? And we usually, whenever we notice that in ourselves, in Oda at least, we have to remind ourselves that, okay, so 90% of the users that we'll have in the future haven't tested Oda yet, right? So you should be allowed to kind of challenge the established thing. But I guess kind of that's a bit different in Finn, like when you do have like I don't know, 99% market share, sort of like how do you how do you challenge the established? That must be kind of challenging, right?
It's challenging. I don't, and until we have actual traffic, it's a fight that we're just punching in the air right now. We need someone to fight against. Awful analogy saying that we're fighting the users. Yeah. So now we think we know, like it's fighting in the dark a little bit. But I think with Finn, I think it is different because in school as a designer you're taught that you're not designing for everyone. It's always like this particular group that you are designing for. But in Torge, in Finn, you are actually designing for everyone. So it's from like the 15-year-olds that are starting to use this to the older people that are in retirement trying to figure out what to do with their time. I've talked to sheep farmers from Lofoten, and I've talked to busy moms in Oslo. It's it's everyone, and they're selling the most crazy stuff. Like from the sheep farmer, I think he had shipped some ostriches, I don't know.
Mm.
They were sold in Finn, but he shipped them with Hurtigruta, and they also have like a trust. You put the birds on there, and then a guy in the where the boat comes in that will take them off for you. And so it's yeah, it's of course that's I don't know if it's a corner case, but it's not
Well, there
unusual.
is.
I remember it very well. So
I
it's
think, but
we.
yeah, sorry. I think that's very interesting when you have a huge user group. So the user interviews then become, like you said, a little bit synthetic, because you will find these edge cases if you have 4 million users, which is basically the whole of Norway. You can't really trust that one interview
No,
as a big source of information, right?
we're
So
not
you really
creating a
need.
bird shipping service.
No, exactly. Which for him would be great, I assume, if you did that. But it really is taking then, and let's get into also then other ways of getting insights. So user interviews, of course, a big one for everyone. But in some cases, you need to start looking at other things. And one thing is then, as you mentioned, analytics from your product, right? What are other ways you can get validation? Let's say you're in the next phase, you have established a
Yeah.
problem, but you need to actually validate where your solution is going. So how do you use then analytics or other things to get those decision points?
I'm not the biggest. Sorry.
No, we have a large toolbox, and we always try to like triangulate methods. So we use both qual and quant data if we have them, but we don't always have them. Like new marketplaces, they don't necessarily have any data to use. But if we can, we do use both. So we have a whole insights department in Finn with data scientists and people who are good at surveys, for instance. So we can do surveys. Um, we do a lot of prototyping. We do smoke tests with fake doors on Finn. We try not to do too much of them so that the user gets annoyed, but we do that as well.
Say a little
Um,
more of, because I also love the fake door test. Would you, for those not familiar, what is it?
do you want to use the example from employer branding, Ragnhild?
Yes. So I worked in it's an initiative in the new marketplaces. Was it a year ago? No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago. Pandemics fly fast. Yeah. So we were working on. Did you say employer branding?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I was
You
thinking
did
about.
it in EdTech as well. Use
Yes.
the EdTech example if it's
Yes.
easier.
So we were looking at educational technology and how could we create a marketplace for like continuous learning, with the focus being after you've found the job and worked for some time, maybe you would like to, elevate your skills or change course. So yeah, maybe we could do something to help you with that. So we needed to find out if people when they were looking for a new job, for example, would be interested in doing that. So to get this new job, you need to have these three main skills, and maybe you only had one of those three skills. So we could immediately direct you to a class or a course or whatever sort of skill upgrading activity you could do directly in those ads. So we created, they were real content sort of, but the system behind was not there. We didn't actually send you there. You didn't actually get to that place, but we saw if people clicked on the ads or for the skill upgrading activity through. We both had the test in an actual job ad, so a very particular one, but also in like the job front page after you click on jobs on the front page of Finn. You already see something that is we think is relevant for you, and we also tried to have it there. I don't remember the numbers for this, but that's so the everything behind the scene was non-existent, but we wanted to get some numbers, if both the different pages were like, where would we get more traffic and if people would click at all.
It's such an easy and cheap way to test interest for something new. It
Yeah.
really is quite magical if you have the right case for it. You just want to basically get people to click on something. Of course, it won't work in all products if it's too complicated, etc. But I think mostly you can actually test a lot using this method.
You
Yeah,
can
and I
also
think
test pricing.
Yes.
yeah. I think in Finn,
And how
people
did it
are.
go?
Sorry,
Can you share the results and kind of how it went after that?
I don't
Not
remember. It's too.
actual numbers, but did you validate your assumptions?
People clicked, so we continued working with the project. I don't think we had impressive numbers, and I don't remember like what's the line that you should be at for moving forwards. But it was definitely we found an area where people would be interested in clicking into looking at something.
But this is the
But
interesting thing as well, right? That you can think that you could validate stuff like this, but then what happens next is that you just get more questions, right? Or more problems to solve, or yeah. So people click, but
yeah,
why didn't they click more? Kind of, and or how yeah, how was the reception of the thing when they realized that there wasn't anything kind of behind this ad,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
it's
that's
true.
part of the
The
whole
results
show.
aren't always conclusive, of course, in this field. So you need
No.
to use intuition and other sources as well. And did you have any other examples, Hege, of these techniques?
Of the smoke test, the fake
No, I
worm.
mean other points
Other
of
examples?
data. Hmm.
Well, we do A/B testing a lot. Probably most companies do these days, but that is very important to take the risk down, because qualitative data is very, very interesting and gives you a lot of playroom when you're developing the concepts. But then people do things differently from what they say they will do. So having it out as an A/B test for a small population, maybe just 1% on Finn, is very interesting, because then you can see whether they are actually doing what they said they were going to do. So that takes the risk down for us. So we normally every bigger change on Finn will be through a A/B test before we take it out to the entire population.
And this is quite far down in the funnel when
Yeah,
you validated, but you need to decide basically.
yeah.
So I wanted to just also tie this into the bigger process a little bit. So there's a lot of ways to define product discovery, but usually it's in some sort of process, right? So
Hmm.
if you divide it into four, I would say that one is kind of learning and understanding, finding the problem. Two is then to define a little bit more and to see where are we going. Is this core or is it new business? Kind of, we talked about that. And then number three, which is more ideation and kind of finding out, okay, so we have this problem. How do we solve it? And then the interesting thing, how do we prioritize it? And then it's the fourth where we got into now. It's more testing, prototyping, going into these smaller decisions. But the number three there, let's talk about that. So how do we prioritize all of our great ideas, other ideas? How do we get a team together? I mean, how do you work with then all these initiatives, and who gets the budget and who doesn't?
This is probably the hardest thing we do in Finn. Absolutely the hardest thing we do in Finn.
Yes.
Because we talked to Spotify and a couple of other companies some years back when we tried to do a reorg, and they said, "Oh, if we have a great idea, we just hire new people." And it's not like that in Finn. We are pretty stable around. Well, now closing in on 500 employees, but when I started in 2018 it was 460, so we're not like growing immensely when it comes to people. So that makes it even more hard to prioritize. And the teams are also quite stable. We don't, it's not like a consultant company where you just take someone off one team and put them on another, because there's maintenance and stuff like that, 20 years of maintenance. So what we do is we have, on a very high level, we have what we call buckets. So the management team will divide the main, well, in big buckets they will say spend spend 15% on new cases, and spend 25% on building the platform, and 55% on new development, like completely new development. So you have that top level buckets. But then when you come down to the 55% of new development, we are 6 directors who wants to have our say, and we have these discussions these days, actually, because we are planning 2022 now, goals and ambitions for 2022. And then we have because we get push from the KL as well, the top leader group in Schibsted, on where we have to move. So we have to take that into consideration as well. And then we have business cases and the strategy pointing in one direction. And all this has to be sort of taken into consideration when we try to focus and prioritize. So right now we have 4 main priorities which we have to reach, have to manage to get where the end goal is, in order to both provide growth for the shareholders, but also to provide valuable solutions to the users and our professional customers. So, but even 4, it sounds like it's not that much, but even that is really, really hard. So maybe we should experiment sometime with just having 1 and then just let the whole of Finn move in that direction. But it's so difficult because not everybody feels that they can contribute either.
Yeah, I think this is a big pain for all companies, basically. Even if you are in a startup and you have a very focused problem area, you still need to prioritize your time and your money on something, right? And I think it's also interesting when I moved from UX design to product, you understand more and more that it's not just about the user. There are so many other things that you need to balance in. Of course, we would love to make these products the best, that give the users all the features that they want, but we do have a lot of considerations when we prioritize.
I think it's interesting to look, or like to hear you talk about kind of how you organize the company for this, right? Because in my there's like 2 ways of looking at it. Like you talked about, like, lastly, now you talked about kind of the top down kind of financial kind of decision driven strategy or prioritization, right? Which I guess kind of, when you get to kind of the maturity that Finn is at, like, so established that you have much kind of a stricter kind of setup of basically kind of the business side of things, right? Whereas other companies are very kind of relentless on the bottom up thing, right? So you do kind of all the product discovery and basically the product development sort of from like a very narrow team perspective, right? And I guess that's challenging in an environment like Finn, right? Because you want to do both. Like you want to kind of have bottom up on ideas, but I guess kind of when you're so established and so kind of like 20 years of history, as you mentioned, like there's a lot of just kind of keeping it afloat, sort of like maintenance work as well. And so you think that you compensate by kind of building these like new business initiatives for just kind of for just having kind of a someone to basically focus on new development, or is it just kind of because we can kind of have
We actually do both. We do both bottom up and top down. Top down is on a very abstract, high level. So they never say you need to fix Vipps payment on Torget. They would never say that. They would say make sure Torget is viable in 3 years as well. So focus on that. Make sure you spend enough resources on Torget. That is basically what they do. And then you will have, we we are trying to focus on outcomes instead of outputs. So we would never ask a team to make something. We would ask them to change a user behavior. So, and then it's up to the team to come up with the best ideas on how to change that user behavior. If we want people to buy more on motor, for instance, how should they do that? What is the most important thing for the car buyer to get solved? And that would be ideation and product discovery in the team, because that would no one in the management team would try to override the ideas from the team itself, but they would give a direction, and then the team would come up with all the ideas.
But I
I
guess
think that's
there's
a good point.
I guess there's a lot of ideas in the management team as well that get trickled down, right? Because that happens everywhere.
Yeah. But the format that we prioritize on really doesn't allow it. So we have gatekeepers who will say, this is not an ambition or a goal. This is a feature, and then they will get it back. So it's not that easy actually to make that happen, which is good, which is really good.
So I think we need to start wrapping up a little bit. But I think you had a good point there that even though you have, because companies need to have goals and ambitions on a company level, like some use OKRs, of course, in bigger companies like ours, you do that. So you set some goals for each area, for instance, but that doesn't mean that you don't have freedom within them, like you said, to actually create great experiences. So I think that's for people listening who think that it's limiting to work in a big company. It doesn't need to be. If you have a good autonomous team, you have your problem space maybe defined a little, but you have a lot of freedom to actually develop. You should have, at least.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for giving us insights into Finn. It's an exciting company. You are often on the list of companies that people want to work for, right? Are you still in the top there?
We are, and we are very proud.
So something must be working, right?
Absolutely. That also has to do with the culture. It's a fantastic culture.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we should have an episode on culture, and it's definitely a big topic in product. How do you keep the good people working for you? But thank you so much. I think we've had some concrete examples on how to do product discovery. Of course, you can always go on and on how can you follow this process to the point, but I think you just need to experiment, right? You need to just try out these different techniques, and there's a lot of stuff online, so you can Google whatever you want. But of course, user interviews in some form will always be present, and using data as well. And then you can do these fake door tests or other kind of hypothesis-driven tests. But thank you so much for coming with these great examples.
Could I
Martin,
just
anything you want
ask?
to?
Just ask on the end here. Like, there's usually kind of when we're closing in on the new year, right? We have kind of New Year's what do you call it? I can't even say the word. Resolutions. Thank you. It's a hard word to say. So do we have kind of any new lockdown resolutions, sort of like some tips or ideas or some wishes that you could kind of spend or like inspire others to do if there will become a new lockdown now? So, or maybe you guys listening to this, you might actually kind of hear this in a lockdown. So here's kind of some fresh tips for you.
I'm finding it hard to get motivated to go into another lockdown, but I'm trying to brush off the things I did last time, and that was I spent a lot of time making crazy food. So I know I already have someone I need to make food for because it's a birthday gift. So they will probably get some even more crazy experimental food on Saturday because then I can spend. This sounds crazy. I spent Friday evening and then the whole of Saturday making food. Just to have time go by and doing something that I like doing, listening to an audiobook or watching series or whatever as I go. So Yeah. Other than
Yeah.
that, just it's being in a lockdown doesn't mean you have to be alone. So get out, talk to people, stuff like that.
Get some fresh air. That's my
Yeah.
big,
Super
most
cold,
important
fresh
thing.
air.
Yeah. And
How about you,
remember
Hege?
that there are some nice things about it as well, and we shouldn't forget completely about that. For instance, I like that I feel I know my colleagues better now because I've been in their homes for almost 2 years. I know what it looks like. I know how their kids are because sometimes they will sit on the lap. So
The
that is
pets
also
as well.
yeah.
All the pets, they keep going in and out.
Jumping up on your lap. So I think there are some nice things about it as well. But I have one tip, which is which I enjoy a lot myself, and it's not necessarily about lockdown. It's more about video meetings, which we will probably continue doing because we will be working hybrid. And that is, don't be as strict as you would normally be sticking to your agenda. Spend the first 5 minutes of the meeting just chatting because you need that interaction when you don't meet at the coffee machine. So I always flex a little bit in the beginning of a meeting. People probably think that I'm just not very structured, but I am. I just really, really want us to talk a little bit about the last weekend and
Yeah,
what
it's
we
so
were doing
important.
tomorrow. Yeah, it's so important.
I also
Stay
remember
connected.
learning in the first lockdown that as a product manager, you're always in meetings, right? Or a lot of meetings. You have a lot on your agenda. So I kind of assume that everyone else does as well. And I try to keep the meetings short and effective, like you said. But then realizing that some of the developers, for instance, they don't have another meeting that day. So they really liked that the meeting went long because they just wanted to talk to someone. So don't assume that everyone else is as busy with meetings. Basically, take the time to talk to them.
Great.
I do have one more tip that I just remembered in the last lockdown. My team, we did every Friday. We tried to get the Friday feeling together because when you're always at home, every day is the same. So we had just 30 minutes meeting on late on Friday that we called Friday Rants, which is no agenda. Maybe we have something we call the personal presentation, a PP. So someone presents something fun about themselves, and then maybe someone opens a beer, and it's usually a lot of laughter. And I managed to get the Friday feeling with those, and we've already started those now, assuming that we'll need them. So find a way to go into the weekend on a happy note and get that Friday feeling is that's I find motivation in that, and I'm looking forward to that.
Very good tips. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us in Product Club, and we'll be back soon, Halina, with a new fresh episode with something else on the agenda.
Yep.
Yeah. Super.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.